Hi all, this is Skate, and this is obviously the Vk72.01 K, which is a very controversial tank. Some people absolutely love it, and some people absolutely despise the thing. Personally, I love the thing. In this video, I'll have two replays for you. Combined damage of around 12,000, combined block damage of around 12,000. And they highlight the weaknesses and the strengths of this tank. And what I'm probably going to do is talk mostly about the armour, because it's riddled with weak spots, as we know. But, taking that into consideration, I've been told it's the worst. A lot of people I speak to say, why would you drive this when you could drive an E100? Or, if you want a tank which bounces, why don't you drive the mouse? Now, I love my German tanks, and I like German heavies. So I thought I'd have a look at my own stats literally just before making this video. And I've actually, surprised me a little bit, I've got a higher average damage in this tank than I do in the E100 and the mouse. I have a higher average damage in this tank than I do the other two. I even have a higher spot rate in this thing than I do the other two. But I have a slightly lower survival rate in this than I do the other two. Which kind of says to me, combined with that spot rate, I may play this thing a little bit too aggressively. But, like I said, my other stats are higher in it, so it swings in roundabouts, I suppose. But yeah, let's talk about the armour then. Okay, what I just did, I reversed out sideways and shot a Death Star. That was a very dumb thing to do, but I knew the Death Star was on a huge reload, so I was perfectly safe to do that without slowly turning my tank all the way around. The only circumstance where I'd do that is when I know for a fact I am not going to get shot flat out, because broad sideways like that, I'm not going to bounce anything. Now it does have 160mm of side armour, which on the surface sounds like a stupidly good amount, especially when you think mouse has 185 and the E100 has 120, but obviously the E100 has spaced armour. This thing, on the other hand, well, it's got that massive side armour number, but there is a fundamental weakness in the side armour, and that would be where the hull is rounded to match the turret shape. It obviously flattens off a bit. So you'll have people tell you, you can't side scrape this thing. It's impossible because of that giant weak spot. Well, my opinion's slightly different. You can side scrape one of these. In fact, you can guarantee if you side scrape one of these things, everybody's going to be trying to aim for that spot. If you're wiggling and you're moving and you're not at a ridiculous angle on your side scrape, you can actually do it. If I'm side scraping one of these, I will try and keep the angle shallow, like this. Angle in a little bit, and your tracks absorb a stupid amount. Now, I'm not saying do this and every shell will magically bounce. It won't. But surely doing things like this, baiting people on the weak spot, trying to give it to them while moving so they think they can hit it, increases your chances of bouncing, increases the probability that you're going to get some ridiculous shots and improve your survivability. Because I've said it 1,000 times in videos, that's exactly what manipulating armour is all about. Angling, wiggling, etc. doesn't guarantee every shot that's fired at you is going to bounce off you, but it does massively increase the odds. And if there's 4 shots fired at you, and they're off, say, for example, in the E100, 2 bounce, well, you're still alive. Yet, if you did try and side scrape without worrying about your angle, without putting some wiggle on it while you're going back and forth, then, well, more likely those shots are going to penetrate. And then aside from that sort of scenario, you have this scenario. In this scenario, I have no weaknesses on my hull. I'm using the full 7 degrees of gun depression, and the frontal armour has 240mm. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that is the thickest frontal armour in the game that this tank has, especially on the lower plate. That's monstrous values. That's to the point where medium tanks are going to struggle to go through the front of this thing without heat or without premium ammunition. And if you're angling that frontal plate, that's to the point where tank destroyers are going to start to struggle with this tank. Actually, touching on ammo, you'll notice on this one, my ammo loadout was completely screwed up. In fact, I was only carrying 4 heat, Even when I was playing in the contributor account, I was a cheapskate. I'll just try not to use as much premium ammo as I can. But that being said, I should have just loaded more in the scenario I needed, because in this scenario, there's a lot of heavy tanks. In fact, there's a lot of German super heavies. So that, in terms of this game, was fatal flaw number 1 on my behalf. Fatal flaw number 2 is... Now, I should try and hold my ground here, and you'll find out why very soon. But that's what I think is my next fatal flaw. But while all this is going on, obviously we've talked about the armour on the hull. Next up we need to talk about the turret. It has 200mm of armour on the turret, which sounds okay. And it is okay. It's not impervious, not by any shape or form. In fact, the cheeks next to the gun are a weakness. You can see, looking at that one straight ahead, there's 2 patches on either side of the gun, and they are able to be penetrated. Most people will still fire premium ammo to try and guarantee their penetration, yet it's the same scenario again. It is a weak spot on either side, which means the armor's not impervious, the same as the weak spots on the side. But here's the most important thing. Because they are weak spots with ridiculous armor on either side of the weak spot, they will still produce ridiculous bounces when people are aiming for them. That's providing you're moving. If you sit there completely still in front of a tank, yeah, I'm not surprised if they penetrate. Like that scenario, he over-angled when he came out. I had an easy shot on the side of him. And now you can see why it was a fatal flaw earlier. I never would have got back to the cap circle in time. I'm too damn slow. But we blocked 7,400 damage, which is what I wanted to show you. And what I think is a perfect example of the armour on this thing. I mean, yes, it does have a weak spot on the side of the hull, and yes, it does have weak spots just on either side of the gun. But that doesn't mean the armour is bad on this thing, not in any shape or form. I mean, as I've already mentioned, it's got thick armour, and it's got very bouncy armour all around both sides of those weak spots on the hull and on the turret. So what that pretty much translates to is, when you're moving, if you're wiggling, they're not always going to hit those weak spots, and you are going to get more bounces than if you just sit there. And then there's the other thing. If you are getting shot at, and this is the number 1 rule when it comes to the turret on this thing, do not turn your turret away like you would with a mouse. You need to keep your gun pointed at them at all times, and then wiggle, because that's when you will get the bounces off the turret. The amount of these things I see side scraping and then pointing their turret in like they would with a mouse, they're just giving you the cheek at that point, and you can very easily penetrate the cheek. Now, if you are side scraping, you don't want to turn your turret in. In fact, you want to be doing the opposite. You want to turn your turret out, because that will, as an example, if you're on the left hand side of a building and you're side scraping there, you want to turn your turret more to the left, because the left hand side cheek won't be exposed. It's just a big dirty gun mantlet to shoot at, and nothing is penetrating that gun mantlet. So I honestly think the key to this tank is just giving it a bit of a wiggle if you are at range where they can aim in accurately on those spots. And then we need to talk about the gun. Now, worst DPM at tier 10. Bear with me. Is that actually a weakness? Now, I know that sounds nuts, but think about it. You are spending most of your time focusing on positioning your armor. You're spending most of your time focusing on getting those bounces. At that point, you're increasing your survivability, increasing your chances of staying in the game longer, and almost making that lack of damage per minute a moot point. Now, I know on the surface of it that sounds a little bit stupid, because if you went, yeah, but Skate, if you had more DPM, you could do more damage earlier on. Yeah, I get it. But my logic is we don't. So therefore we have to put up with what we got. And I really can't see them buffing this tank in any shape or form. Yeah, I know some people hate it. Like I said, it's a Marmite tank. But I know some people absolutely adore it. And if you look at the average stats on this thing, it does perform really well. So because of that lack of DPM, your sole focus is manipulating the armour, angling it correctly. I mean, we just drove out frontally in front of a grill, and I have no concerns on that whatsoever, because we're slightly angled, which means that front plate is just ridiculous, and so is this shot. I'm quite proud of that one. Now back to the grill. The reason I wasn't concerned with being shot at by that grill is because my right track wheel, which would be the weaker of the two in this scenario, is not exposed. There's a heat round bouncing, by the way. But because of that, all he has is my front plate and the side of my tank to shoot at. I think we bounced off the turret on that last one then. But that's another argument I see against this tank. The track wheel's weak. Really? Have you shot an IS-7 track wheel? It's really easy to penetrate pretty much most tanks through the track wheel if you are not angling it correctly. I've been shot in this tank and my IS-7 1,000 times through the track wheel. That's not the tank's fault, that's my fault. I'm either not angled correctly, or somebody has managed to flank and throw my angling completely out of the window. But yeah, that's an issue with every tank and track wheel. You can penetrate most tanks through the track wheel. If they have thick spaced armour, like the mouse, like the Motion, etc., or the E100, then you should never be trying to shoot through the side armour to go through the track wheel. You either shoot below it to take the track wheel off, or, as we did with the mouse earlier, aim above the track so you go through the engine deck. That way you've actually got more chance of penetrating that area on the mouse at that angle. And then it all boils down to one. Sorry, it tickles me how many bounces you get off this tank. But then it comes down to one of the main questions you get on this tank. And I've had this question asked to me so many times, which is why I wanted to make sure I got this done as soon as I could. Is it a frontline tank? Is it fragile? By no means is this thing fragile, and the answer is yes. Yes, it is a frontline tank. I suppose I should clarify what I think is a frontline tank. If you think YOLOing off into all the reds, dying, and then going thanks for the support team is frontline, no, that's YOLO monkey. That's wrong. If, however, you believe frontlining is getting up close and personal to anything which comes near you, that is what I would define as frontlining, and that is what I would say this tank is very, very good with. Like with the waffle earlier, instead of reversing back so we had clear view with premium ammo at my lower plate, I drove towards him with a slight angle. Makes me much harder to penetrate, which is why you bounce stupid amounts with this tank. Now here comes a rock and a hard place scenario for me. That grill is out to get me, yet there's a T-57 coming my way. So we're gonna try and get one as the T-57. We do get one in, he gets a HE round on me, and then the grill does manage to finish me off. There's no way I would have got out of that scenario. If the mouse pushed with his hit points, it could have been game over for him, and then I would have had a tank on either side of me. So I don't think anyone did anything wrong in that scenario. I think the grill played very, very well, and I put in chat then, GG grill. At the point of dying there, we did 6,200 damage and 4,950 damage blocked. Remember, that doesn't include fires, and we had that mouse really cooking. So I watched the rest of this one, curious how the rest of this game would go, because they are both one-shots, except the grill is a lot more accurate and can very quickly snap off a HE shell on this mouse. So I was really curious as to how this one would go. I was also thinking grill would have better camouflage. Mouse has obviously got the worst camouflage, so the grill being able to see a little bit quicker potentially and snap off quicker than the mouse. Yeah, I kind of thought this was a loss. Now that's nothing against the mouse driver, it's just probability in this circumstance. I would have put my money on the grill. However, Mr. Grill is a little bit impatient. You can see him worrying about the time, and well, just watch, because this really tickled me. Basically, the mouse is hiding up, just waiting for the grill to be impatient and run around. And out of the blue, completely the wrong way in the water with slow traverse, comes the grill. I'm guessing at this point that mouse is very happy, and I was very happy with the mouse because it means he sealed us the win. But credit to the grill, he also played very, very well. Sadly, just a mistake at the end there, so I gave a thumbs up to both of them because I think they both deserved it, and that game did make me laugh. Either way, we did 6,614 damage. We blocked around 5,000. Sadly, no steel wall because we died, even though we still blocked ridiculous amounts of damage. But yeah, Vk72.01 K. I think it's a brilliant tank, and I really enjoy playing it, and I'm going to continue enjoy playing it. And if you want more Vk72.01, and we can touch on other parts of the tank in a bit more depth if you like, I've got plenty more footage on this tank, so I'd be more than happy to. Let me know in the comments, I'm curious. Either way, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye bye.